Caleb Hart had spent his life believing that quiet was a kind of safety. The ranch had taught him that miles of open land, predictable routines, the comfort of fences he'd built with his own hands. When his sister insisted he needed a wife, he agreed only because it sounded practical. A woman to keep the house, tend the garden, maybe soften the long evenings. Nothing complicated. Nothing loud. So when the letter arrived confirming the arrangement, Caleb pictured someone modest and grateful, someone who would fit neatly into the life he had already shaped. The day Mara arrived, the sky was a pale, restless blue, and the wind tugged at everything it touched. Caleb stood near the corral, arms crossed, rehearsing polite words he barely wanted to say. The stagecoach rolled in with a cloud of dust, creaking like it carried trouble instead of promise. When the door opened, he expected hesitation. Instead, a woman stepped down with steady confidence, boots hitting the dirt as if she belonged there already. She wore a fitted coat worn thin at the elbows, trousers dusted from travel, and her dark hair was braided tightly. No loose strands, no softness to hide behind. She looked at him directly, eyes sharp and assessing, as though she were the one deciding whether he would do. "You must be Caleb Hart," she said, voice calm but unafraid. No nervous smile, no lowered gaze. That alone unsettled him more than he cared to admit. He offered to take her bag, and she handed it over without ceremony. It was heavier than he expected. "Books?" he asked before he could stop himself. "Some," she replied. "Tools, too." That should have been his first warning. As they walked toward the house, she asked questions about water rights, about grazing patterns, about why the south fence leaned the way it did. Caleb answered out of habit, then realized she was listening closely, not politely. When he mentioned the drought, she suggested a rotation strategy he hadn't considered. He stopped walking and stared at her, unsure whether to be impressed or irritated. Inside the house, she didn't wait for instruction. She set her bag down, surveyed the room, and opened windows to let the stale air out. "You need more light in here," she said, as if commenting on the weather. "Dark rooms make people smaller." Caleb felt something tighten in his chest. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She wasn't easing into his life. She was stepping straight into it, rearranging things without asking. That night, as they ate a stiff, quiet meal, he watched her hands. Steady, capable, unafraid to take space. He told himself she would settle, that the land would wear her down like it did everyone else. But when he lay awake listening to the wind scrape against the walls, Caleb realized the silence he'd always trusted felt different now. It wasn't calm. It was waiting. Mara never did settle into the quiet the way Caleb expected. Instead, she learned the land as if it were a language she'd been waiting to speak. At dawn she was already awake, boots on, hair braided tight, stepping into the day with purpose. She rode the perimeter fences with him, noticed broken posts before he did, and spoke plainly when something didn't sit right. At first, Caleb answered her with clipped words and long silences, guarding himself the way he always had. But the ranch didn't care about his walls. Work demanded trust, and trust grew whether he wanted it or not. The trouble came in slow, grinding ways. The creek ran lower each week, and cattle grew restless. One night, they spotted unfamiliar tracks near the north pasture, too careful to be strays. Caleb's old instincts urged him to handle it alone, the way he always had. Mara disagreed. She didn't raise her voice or challenge his authority for the sake of it. She simply stood her ground. "You don't survive out here by pretending you're made of stone," she said. You survive by knowing when to lean. Her words followed him long after the lantern was blown out. When the rustlers finally came, it wasn't dramatic at first. Just movement in the dark, a wrong sound in the wrong place. Caleb's pulse thundered as he reached for his rifle, only to realize Mara was already beside him, calm and focused. She didn't rush. She didn't freeze. She moved like someone who understood fear but refused to let it lead. Together, they drove the intruders off, not with reckless bravado, but with planning and patience. When it was over, Caleb's hands shook. Mara's did not. Afterward, sitting on the porch as the first pale light crept over the horizon, something shifted between them. Caleb expected triumph or relief. Instead, he felt exposed. Mara poured them both coffee and said nothing, giving him space without withdrawing. That quiet, shared, chosen, felt different from the one he'd clung to all his life. The drought worsened, forcing hard decisions. Mara suggested selling a portion of the herd early to save the rest. It went against everything Caleb believed, but he listened. When the choice proved right, he didn't thank her. He simply nodded. It was the most honest gratitude he knew how to give. Slowly, he began to see what loving her would require. Not control. Not certainty. It would mean standing beside a woman who refused to shrink, who expected honesty instead of silence. One evening, as the sun bled red across the plains, Caleb finally spoke the truth he'd been avoiding. I thought I wanted simple, he admitted. I thought that meant safe. Mara looked at him, eyes soft but unyielding. And now, he said, voice rough, I want real. She didn't promise ease or peace. She reached for his hand, firm, steady, and held it as the wind swept across the land they were choosing together. Caleb understood then that his heart hadn't been taken from him. It had been given, willingly, to a woman as untamed as the horizon, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of what lay ahead.